Hi there. This is a checklist I made of the 7 things that House of the Dragon Season 3 needs to get right after the backlash to Season 2. I spent months after the season ended working on this checklist. A lot of thought went into it, trying to make a productive discussion that didn't just focus on blind anger at, all of it is having problems, but let's try to specifically define what needed to be improved so we can identify it and check it off on a list if it eventually does improve in season 3. That we have some sort of objective measurement structure that we can use. I actually shared these a few months ago. I've had this for a long time. It's been solid in my mind for over a year. I shared this a few months ago when I did a guest spot on the podcast of Grease Goblins and Voice of Old Town. That they did post the first 10 minutes where I'm talking about, no, Dunkin' Egg was just delayed for scheduling reasons. They still have full confidence it'll be a good show. The rest of it was us talking about season 3 for over an hour, and it was an amazing discussion and very productive, and I wish I could share it all with you of how polite and sensible it was, that instead of all the yelling, compared to all the childish name-calling and toxic online trolls, it was an intellectual, mature, rational back-and-forth discussion, both sides admitting each was perfectly valid, just, well, do we choose hope or do we choose pragmatism of what to expect? That I wish you could all see that. Just, I actually think I lost, but I still thought it was a really good discussion in terms of the art of debate, and let's talk about this civilly. The problem was Voice of Old Town, he explained he was starting a new job at the time, and he said, well, I could crank out the first 10 minutes, but it needed so much editing. I was incredibly busy with a new job. I wasn't able to get it all together. I hope he gets to do it eventually. If not, it was a great experience anyway doing it. It's just, yeah, I think it'll be even nice to put it out after season 3 in a retrospective of going into it. These were the things we thought they could or couldn't do, or what we are optimistic about or not optimistic about, and how much did that match up to what we ultimately got? Just our concerns going into it. The high point of it for me, though, is I walked in with this checklist, and I explained them in advance. In the final section, I'll get to that I was the guy arguing in favor of give them a chance. There was a writer's strike, and the studio screwed them over, cutting their episode count. They were still pessimistic about, well, these changes, which I admit were not due to the strike. I just think I was maintaining they could refine them better if they hadn't, and we don't really know what Martin is upset about. All of that. And again, this is a difference of degree. I actually thought it was a very respectful, good discussion. I wish you could see it to model off of how everyone else is yelling. But I told him I'm saving for my final section. I have this 7-point checklist of things which even I, as a positive person, admit are problems. That these are the 7 things that even according to me, they need to fix in season 3. And I don't know if other people had other lists like this, if you were really dead set on they need to use this other character a lot more, but generally, Grease Goblins and Voice of Old Town agreed with me that, yeah, these are pretty much the 7 points everyone is talking about. Well, I know Grease Goblins did his own podcast on this recently, talking about each point in his was the battles they promised, the pacing, the writing. I lump all that together as point 1, and then my other points are specific characters. That's just how I did it. So let's dive in. Point 1, like I said, is this is all the production issues. Point 1, each one of these I'm going to say the complaint and then the counter of why I'm optimistic about it, for those that I am optimistic about. Point 1, Season 2 didn't have an action climax and the pacing overall was bad. Counter, I'm not really worried for this in Season 3 because there were clear extenuating circumstances objectively beyond the control of the showrunners that aren't happening anymore. It is weird how for 2 years people were actually trying to claim that they ended it with episode 8 on purpose. And yeah, they said, oh no, this is the way we wanted to end it in certain interviews because they don't want to badmouth their boss. But then even Sarah Hess openly said in another interview, guys, you do realize this isn't how we wanted things to end. We just tried to make season 8 we tried to make episode 8 as best we could a functional season finale. given that that the actual finale was cut off. We did the best we could in a bad situation. And understand that they're proud of their own work, what their colleagues did. This was not their decision. They're not even though we're getting an 8 episode season again, they're going in knowing it's 8 episodes with a planned ending that will arc towards Battle of Tumbleton at the end. So the idea of having the planned ending cut off, whether it's an 8 episode season or 10 episode season, knowing that it's whatever length it is going in, it will be planned out. We know there's a action climax. We know it ends with Tumbleton. And pacing wise, it's weird how so many people didn't really understand how much the writer's strike affected live rewrites. That's why it wasn't polished. And it's so weird how people are just going through this without comprehension, seeing the trees but not the forest, of the pattern is they needed live rewrites. We know what went wrong, and this season wasn't made during a strike. So, in terms of the action content and pacing and building towards a climax, all of that we have every reason to believe will be fixed this season. That's point one. As for everything else, point two. Rhaenyra and Alicent can't be friends again. They need to move back towards being enemies. And the example I use is Professor X and Magneto in X-Men, that they can never be full allies nor direct arch nemesis, that it's the tension is what makes it compelling. The tension that they used to be friends but developed irreconcilable divisions, but on a certain level, the only people who understand the other, and the back and forth tension of these former friends is the whole point. And the counter to that is a lot of people are worried about that. I honestly never worried about that even after I saw the last episode of season 2. That it was bizarre to me that people walked away from that going, oh, they're really going to change it, that they're going to be friends and run off together or something. And I honestly thought that they were going to drift apart as season 3 progressed, and that what I keep saying the final episode of season 2 instead of the finale, because it wasn't a finale. I honestly felt that episode 8 of 10 for season 2 was, you've seen TV, you know how it's structured. I thought it was the calm before the storm. Setting up, no, maybe Rhaenyra and Alicent can work things out, only to then have their hopes dashed, because it's tragedy. And I mean, objectively, for plot mechanics, you knew even by the end of episode 8 that the deal hinged on Alicent handing over Aegon, and Aegon has fled the city, so she can't follow through on the deal. Won't Rhaenyra be mad at her about that, grow suspicious of her from that? So even at the time I went, why are you so convinced this will not just fear it, but convinced they're going to have them be super friends again, special friends again, roommates again? No. I never thought that, and it's weird how the clickbaiters overhyped that. And on top of that, not that anyone's paying attention to the news anymore, for months during all of the 2025 filming, Emma Darcy has been repeatedly saying season 3 will be Rhaenyra's villain turn arc, like Paul Atreides in Dune Messiah, that this is her villain turn arc. Openly saying, I wonder if people even still like Rhaenyra after this season. And presumably, Rhaenyra growing more and more ruthless, which is actually what she did in the book after this point in the story, will turn Alicent against her again. So, don't overplay the Alicent-Rhaenyra romance, restore tension to that, have the wedge drive them apart. I'm not worried about that. I think that's going to happen, that they're going to be driven apart again. That they're not drastically changing. And just imagine how weird it is. Imagine if we had gotten a 10-episode season and then 2 weeks later the deal fell apart. We wouldn't have been yelling about that. Instead, it was allowed to, like a cancer, metastasize for 2 years. People going, no, this is a woke show with the gay lesbians who are going to run away and they're not doing Martin's story. You do not care about Martin's story. You are trying, the clickbaiter channels, I mean, they're trying to yell about this for attention. Yeah, we are complaining about, well, this isn't exactly what Book Alicent was like, and her character arc, it might be whitewashing her. That is a separate argument among book fans. What I'm saying is, the clickbaiters were latching on to this just because it was a dog whistle. So I'm not worried I know they're going to break up again. Point 3, and these are things that need to be fixed that we are looking out for. Point 3 of 7. Corlys Velaryon was a bit underused in Season 2. Admittedly, he didn't have that much to do in the source material at this point in time. He had some decent content in Season 2. I wish he got a lot more. It was enough that it wasn't a problem, but we needed more than this. Counter. This ties in with how we know that he'll have a massive amount to do in the Battle of the Gullet that starts in Season 3. That if the show is anything like the book, there will, in Season 3, be friction over that he will want to legitimize his bastard sons and butt heads with Rhaenyra over it, and that, well, if you legitimize them, that makes a succession conflict with Baela and Rhaena, because, you legitimize a bastard son, some would say that puts them ahead of a legitimate daughter. The books kind of imply that happened, but that friction. And again, maybe Season 2 intended for Corlys to do a ton of stuff in the 2 episodes that got cut because they're a giant naval battle that he would heavily feature in as the main POV. And this is just this cosmic accident that he felt underused because it got cut off right before he did something big. So I am not worried about that at all. I admit it was a weak point of Season 2 that Corlys felt like he didn't do as much as he could have. But I fully believe that Season 3 will fix that. I'm not worried about that. Similarly, point 4. Helaena felt a bit underused relative to the amount of setup they gave her as a TV character. She is different from the book. George R. Martin liked her more than the book. He said as much. After Blood and Cheese, book Helaena stops being a character. She goes full Ophelia, like Hamlet, and she's near catatonic. She's not a character anymore. The TV show I'm saying is they had so much added setup that no, she gets really strong Targaryen prophetic visions. The book version didn't really. The amount of setup they put on her, what I think of the most is the behind-the-scenes video for episode 3 of Season 2 showed how much work they put into showing her chambers, or royal chambers, that are full of notebooks that she scribbled prophetic images and words in stream of conscious style, and that she's even scribbled them along the walls, the boards and walls. There's lettering. If you look, there's actually she's just been scrawling things on the walls there. And I thought they were going somewhere with that, because they made these detailed props we never actually saw. Maybe they intended more of that, and it got pushed back into Season 3, reworked in different episodes. I don't know. And we know Martin was fighting with them over Helaena. A lot was in flux. I honestly don't know what Season 3 is going to do with that, because he complained about Maelor and everything. But in terms of physical screen time, Helaena felt a bit underused relative to the setup they had given her in the first few episodes. Granted, she did have some things they tried to think out for her to do, like episode 6, she got caught up in the middle of the food riot. It's just like Corlys, I was expecting more than this. My counter is, I just really hope they're going to do that, and you saw me make, we got leak reports during active filming, and I made videos on this from leaks we got back in September, that they're going to be having Helaena do a lot of stuff that we've been hearing. There was that claim that she'll have a big dialogue scene with Rhaenyra for the first time in front of her dragon Dreamfire. That she's never really exchanged dialogue with Rhaenyra before as a sister. Other prophetic things, Condal hinted we might be seeing a glass candle. I don't know, but we have reason to strongly suspect they're going to use Helaena more than they did, in terms of both raw screen time and meaningful screen time. So I don't walk around worried about that. I'll keep an eye on it. Point 5 of 7. Aemond felt like he was turning into a one-dimensional villain by the end of Season 2, and if they wanted to do more than that, we were due for giving him, a character development. Well, Aegon felt like a one-dimensional villain at the end of Season 1 to some people, and Season 2 really rounded him out as a multi-dimensional character. We needed that for Aemond. Maybe they were always planning to do that in Season 3, I don't know. But by the end of Season 2, he felt like a one-dimensional supervillain. Counter. The actors have said in interviews that Ewan Mitchell has openly said Aemond goes on a big emotional journey this year with Alice Rivers at Harrenhal, which we hoped for, given the Daemon Alice stuff was invented for season 2. Alice Rivers is a big part of Aemon's storyline in the book. It's a big relationship they have. We had hoped we would be getting that. That no, he'll probably go on a character examination journey just like Daemon did, only more so, because this is his storyline is with Alice Rivers, big part of the book. I'm slightly more concerned with this simply because I don't know the specifics of what they're going to do. They have promised, no, don't worry, Aemond will have this big character self-reflection thing with Alice Rivers. Question is, will it succeed or not? But if they're not just going to keep having him being a one-dimensional villain, they're at least going to try to round him out. Will they succeed? Will they do it well? Remains to be seen. Just as well, they're going to try to use Corlys more, they're going to try to use Helaena more. Will it be well written? Or at least they're going to try to do something. So Corlys, Helaena, Aemond, that they need to improve those, and we have reason to think they will. But then we get to the last two of these points, which I am actually concerned about and which do not have an easy defense. So, okay, these are the things that I actually do focus on. Well, point 6, I've actually decided to table that, okay, this is for something else. That Cregan Stark was barely in season 2. That Jace has a rather involved storyline on his trip north visiting Jane Arryn, then Cregan Stark, and yes, I am a shipper for the briefly mentioned romance between Jace and Cregan's mysterious and alluring half-sister Sarah Snow. And on the other hand, though, I can see why, from a TV show perspective, they felt they needed to remove that, because to put it on screen would have been a massive side quest spanning 2 or 3 episodes to give it the time it deserved. They wanted to streamline the plot, so rather than go halfway and satisfy no one, they said we can either shove 2 to 3 episodes on that, or we can keep it streamlined and get him back to Rhaenyra as immediately as possible to focus on that Luke just died. They went with the focused version. I disagree on that point. I can see why they did it. But even TV-only viewers are going, why do they have this whole big dramatic introduction of the Starks in the cold open to season 2, only to never see them again, never see Cregan again? It was odd. Yes, we do see the Winter Wolves, and they'll be great, but he's not with them. And there's that whole bizarreness of that photo leaked of an alternate shot of the Winter Wolves passing through the Twins into the Riverlands where Cregan was with them. At one point they were considering that, but the final version we got, he isn't coming to the Riverlands, which he doesn't in the book. And that leads to questions I really don't know of, is the version we're getting the truncated version, or the other way around? Like, were they going to truncate everything by having Cregan come with them, and then decide at the last minute, no, we can afford to not have Cregan here? Or is not having Cregan the condensation? I don't know which is which. He doesn't come with them in the book, so I guess, okay, it's book accurate not to come. Maybe they made bigger condensations which were later abandoned. But the point here is I've actually made my peace with this. I hate that phrase, but I have. Because I've come to accept that season 2 wasn't really the time that a TV format could fit in Cregan Stark. He's a big character in the books. He rules the North for decades. He ruled it longer than almost anyone. And he has a big impact on multiple prequel eras. He's young here. I've come to accept, okay, that would have been a massive tangent. I can see why you didn't do it. And he isn't in the rest of this specific story that much. So I've reworked point 6 here into, I'm not waiting to see Cregan Stark in season 3. As far as we know, he doesn't even appear on screen. But, I quote, I will overlook how little Cregan Stark was used in season 2 when they left out some bits of him with Sarah Snow and stuff. I will overlook that if we later get confirmation of a Regency show as a direct sequel to this, because Cregan is a more important character in the Regency era. So I can kind of see how you'd go, well, we're saving it for a Regency sequel, which is Regency Season 1 is basically House of the Dragon Season 5. Maybe Jace could even show up in a flashback episode. Like Breaking Bad had flashback episodes all the time featuring characters who in the current day were dead. Maybe they could show Jace with Kragan and Sarah and doing White Walker stuff in a flashback. Or show Kragan has an interesting backstory where his uncle usurped him and stuff. That would be flashbacks with like a child actor or something. We have to think, TV structure can be different than what we're used to in prior seasons, but I'm willing to accept that it made more sense to push all the Kragan stuff to a Regency show. So give me a Regency show. Thankfully, Ryan Condal just this week has made increasingly more positive comments about maybe we are getting a Regency show. And from other leaks, we've seen that there's a shot in the trailers of Aemond flat out giving Alice Rivers a dragon egg, which is a massive setup for something that happens in the Regency era with Mordred Targaryen. So I am not sitting around in season 3 waiting for Kragan. I'm sitting around waiting for Regency show news. Separate issue. So really, out of all these 7 points, the only one that I'm actually worried about, that there is no easy defense for, of my checklist of things we need to watch out for, are they improving this in season 3? Point 7. The controversial decision to merge Rhaena with Nettles. By this point, they are openly showing Rhaena riding Sheepstealer in trailers. Advanced reviews have said, we know. Nettles is, we already knew 99.999% at the end of season 2. Unless Nettles jumps out from behind a rock, she's not coming in. No, Rhaena, they merged with Nettles. This was a controversial decision, and I've said before, I understand on paper, because we've known since season 1 they were hinting they might do it. I can see the argument for merging them, even though I disagree with it. It's not the craziest thing I've ever heard, and it's not, against themes. It might be one of the things that Martin got angry about, but from a TV show perspective, I can see why they would do that, and it wouldn't ruin the entire show. At worst, it would be, a not great storyline compared to things Benioff and Weiss did. So, accepting as a given that on paper, the way I phrased it was accepting as a given that on paper, Rhaena was merged with Nettles. Will it be good, even from the perspective of a TV-only audience? That hypothetically it might be possible to do that well, but the writers fail to do it, just in terms of their specific writing. We'll have to see on that. This is a major change, and the thing everyone will be talking about is Rhaena in season 3. This is what keeps me up at night. Rhaena in season 3, how they're handling that, because it's a big change, and I don't know what the knock-on effects are. So in summary, the 7 things I at least am looking out for were: point 1, deliver on big battles and have better pacing. We knew that was coming. The advanced reviews are saying it came. They said, wow, there's big battles and they're so much better paced now, even in the dialogue scenes. Point 2, Rhaenysant needs to end, by which I mean go from active friendship to the frenemies angrily yelling at each other like Professor X and Magneto again. The enemies lovers, the tension there needs to come back. That they can't be friends. There has to be argument between them, and I think, Rhaenyra being ruthless, Aegon not being there for Alicent to hand over to her. I don't think they're going to be that friendly anymore. I think a wedge will be driven between them again as the season progresses. So we'll keep an eye out. That isn't the end of Rhaenysant as a phenomenon. You understand the tension there. They're not going to run off into the sunset being friends. Some people seriously thought that's not happening. So battles, pacing, have Alicent and Rhaenyra fighting again and arguing. 3, 4, and 5 are basically give Corlys, Helaena, and Aemond more to do. We'll give Corlys and Helaena physically more to do, and Aemond flesh him out with character development scenes as more than just a 2-dimensional villain. From filming reports, we have every reason to believe Corlys and Helaena actually get more screen time in season 3, and the actor has openly said Aemond will have a big character growth arc with Alice Rivers at Harrenhal. Will these scenes be well written or not? Separate question, but physically they're going to be trying to do it. Point six, that the Starks were underused, was one of my main 7 complaints about season 2. I'm willing to accept, okay, you're pushing it into a Regency show. Please tell me you're planning a Regency show. Give me hope. So the 7th problem I had with season 2, which is really the only one I'm actually concerned about for season 3, is you made a really big change merging Rhaena with Nettles. Will it be good or not? Accepting as a given that you did it for a TV-only audience, how well is that going to do? What quality level can we expect from this very divergent Rhaena Nettles story, this unproven Rhaena Nettles storyline? I am already planning videos about that. So that's what I am focused on and think is probable compared to the doomsayers saying, no, there's all this stuff, there's stuff that's going wrong. No, there is a clear checklist of things that I will, after the season 3 finale, I will revisit this checklist and go down the list of, is there anything, and there might be new problems for all I know, but okay, do we still have complaints left? By objective measurable criteria, did they turn things around on the parts that we felt were relatively weak in season 2? So let's all look forward to that and just know that throughout all of my reviews in the coming weeks, these are the characters I'm paying attention to more than others. Rhaenyra, Alicent, Corlys, Helaena, Aemond, Rhaena. So, which are the core ones anyway, but it'll be a fun journey trying to see if we can really turn this fight around.